Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Hat Historian. In this special video, I will be answering the questions that you sent me as part of the AMA I opened the other day to celebrate reaching 50,000 subscribers. And I want to thank all of you for subscribing and supporting my not so little anymore channel, so y'all are great. All right, let's begin. And I will be reading these questions. They've been submitted in both languages my channel is in, so I'll just be translating them as I go in the language appropriate. So let's do our best. From Vaclav Fecht, sorry for pronouncing it. Favorite hat to wear daily? Well, you've actually seen this hat before. It is my green flat cap, which I really like. This is the hat you're most likely to see me wear around, mostly in the winter, but when weather is appropriate. I like it because it is comfortable, it is waterproof, it's waxed cotton, it's made by Barber, and it's easy to fold up and fit in a pocket. So this is my favorite hat, and you've seen it in my video on the flat cap. From Torgoviflot M. Adin Shah. Привет. How many hats are at your disposal? Well, it's been a while since I've actually counted them. I did it once during pandemic when we were all very bored, and I was somewhere around 82. But I've acquired a few since then, so I'd say probably rounding around 100 these days, so quite a few. From Stanley Holt, 8766. What got you interested in hats? Well, it's hard to pinpoint a single thing. I've always been interested in kind of fun style, and as you see, I like wearing formal wear. One thing, though, that I think is probably influenced me is the fact that in my grandfather's house in Kansas City, there is a room in the basement where we have a pool table, and we would play pool with my cousins and such, and there were a bunch of old hats that were scattered all around the room. And the tradition was that we'd all wear a fun hat to whenever we were playing. I've since then exported that tradition back to France, where we have another little billiards table, and so I put my own hats. So that kind of started it, and yeah, I've ever since I was young in high school, I'd wear different hats. That was my sort of countercultural mark. So I was kind of a nerd in high school. Still am now. L'Orignal des Marais. The presented hats brought back from your trips? You have more Anglophone or Francophone views and subscribers. So some of the hats have actually been brought back from trips. So from places I visited, and you'll see an upcoming one soon with a hat that I just got in Korea this summer. And I've brought some back from Egypt. The fez I got is from there. And some hats were brought back by friends from their own trips who very kindly brought some back, like my Asian conical hat. So yeah, a hat is a good souvenir for me to get. Whenever I travel to another country, I try and find a relatively typical one from there. And when friends go to a place, I ask them if they have any room for in their suitcase. And do I have more English or French-speaking subscribers and viewers? Well, I do have more English-speaking ones right now, although there was a time when the French pulled ahead very fast, thanks to the Pickelhaube video of all things. But I don't know exactly the number, honestly, but it makes sense because there's more English speakers in the world than French speakers. So based on the views, usually there's 2 or 3 times more English views than Anglophone views than Francophone views. But I will still keep doing my videos in both languages because I want both to be able to see them. PB Getson. What is the oldest known style of hat that is commonly worn somewhere today that you have talked about on your channel? So when you say commonly worn, I would say, again, it's the flat cap that I was wearing earlier, that forms of it go back to the 15th, 16th century. It's a fairly simple hat. Arguably, you could just say that the knit cap, just your normal winter wool knit hat, is probably also one of the oldest styles because it's one of the simplest. So I'd say that you have other ones in different countries, But yeah, I'd say commonly worn throughout the world in popular culture. I'd say probably the flat cap or the knit cap. One of those. Kikai 109. But who are you? What are you doing in the United States? Who am I? Jean-Charles Fourier. Hi. Um, what am I doing in the United States? Well, I live here part of the year. I'm half French, half American. So, yeah, I like both my countries and I like to spend time in both. And, well, despite what you might see these days, the US isn't a bad place, but I like spending time in France too. So, yeah, I split my time. Magnificus 80, Magnificus 8581. What is the least useful hat in history? I'm leaning towards the Shako. Totally ridiculous to fight in. Well, actually, useless is a very nebulous term, and I would say the Shako is not the most useless. It's definitely cumbersome, heavy, and impractical for warfare, but it does have a little visor on the front, so it does actually protect your eyes from the sun, which is more than you can say for other hats. Military-wise, I'd say that arguably hats like the side cap or even the companies that wore fezzes would be more useless because they don't really protect from cold, they don't protect from the rain, they don't protect you from the sun because they don't have a rim. But they do allow you to display rank, provide esprit de corps, provide so they do have a function. And then if you're talking about civilian hats, again, it's debatable because you could say little skull caps like, well, maybe, but kippas or the little what are they called? Taqiyas that Muslims wear are not very practical because they don't really protect you from anything, but they have a use. They show the faith of the wearer. So useless depends on what you mean by use. Every hat has a function of some or another, and even if it's just to be decorative, that is a use. So to answer your question, I don't know if there's any most useless, but I'll just have to go with whatever hat it was Princess Beatrice wore to William and Kate's wedding. That thing looked weird. JANKK4. Where do you buy your hats? Oh, everywhere. So when I travel, I try and look for a good hat shop in wherever I'm staying. I have a couple of ones both uh, when I in the United States and France that I know. And then, I mean, honestly, I find a lot of them online. There's great resources. I usually, if you watch, I will try and put wherever I obtain the hat that I'm wearing in a particular video in the subject description. So, yeah, a little bit everywhere. I know it's not a very helpful answer, but Arnold Dumb. Have you ever tried to design a hat yourself? A little bit. I did do some kind of world building for fantasy stuff when I was younger and still fun. And tried to design military hats for that particular world. They're not particularly creative, so I've never designed exactly a full hat myself. I've customized ones and asked for specific ones. But yeah, well, I'm not a fashion designer, so I stick to my strengths. But yeah, maybe one day if I have a great idea, I'll try one. Mikhail 27930. Oh, a bunch of questions. Where has the passion for hats come from? Where do you find your information? Where are you from? What's your favorite hat? The presented hats are the presented hats yours? A lot of questions. Well, a couple of these I've already answered. The passion for hats, I think, started when I was young as both a little distinguishing mark influenced by hats I found around my grandfather's house and just liking to have warm heads. So it's a whole mix. And, well, not the a touching little story is that the last thing I heard from my grandmother when I last saw her at the hospital as I was leaving, I put my hat on there and she just kind of said to me in French, "What would he do without his hat?" And I smiled at her, so I have a very fond memory of that. And my favorite hat, well, I showed it to you earlier. It's my flat cap. Although that's the favorite hat to wear for me to wear. One of my favorite kinds of hats that I have a bunch of variants are is the kepi, the French Army hat. I don't know. I just think it's sharp. Where do you find your information? A little bit everywhere. A lot of it online on trusted sources, but I also find stuff through WorldCat and that I obtain through my local public library in Kansas City, and I have a few books of my own. So a lot of articles online have have a good um, resource. Where am I from? Well, I was born in Normandy, France, and my parents are from France and the U.S. So where am I from? I'd say Normandy, France, but my homes are Normandy and Missouri. Um, and all the presented hats yours? Almost all of them. A couple of ones I've had to borrow, like one of the helmets for the helmets of World War One. And when I start, and I will start doing women's hats, I'll probably borrow them. I have some friends who have some because my hats I like to wear, so I don't really have women's hats. But otherwise, yes, all of the other ones are mine. So I have a lot. Stephen J. Lovelace. Is there any hat you wouldn't cover for fear of cultural appropriation or other reasons? So there's some hats that I would approach with caution, well, carefully, to respect the culture. Um, I hope that I treat all hats that I wear with respect and the cultures they come from. One that might leap to mind would be something like the Native American headdress, which I feel I would have to get some sort of, I don't know, official permission from one of the tribes to wear in my video if I cover it, because I know it's very important to them. But otherwise, I do ask for people from the communities I cover opinion, and honestly, they said, as long as I'm respectful, wear away. So there isn't a particular hat that I wouldn't cover, but some I might just eh, have a few steps before I do it. Um, yeah. Laman Knight. If you could make one historical type of hat popular again in the present day, which would you choose? Ooh, that's a good question. Off the top of my head, I'd say the tricorn. That one looks cool. I like it, just the 18th century style. Any at all that is no longer worn in any well, that is no longer really worn and that I could make popular again. Yeah, if I had to choose one off the top of my head, the tricorn. If I have another idea, I'll drop it in the comments. Kevin00 McCoy. How does your work within this channel intersect with professional work and personal hobbies outside this channel? Well, I am a historian, so that's how it intersects. I use skills from one for the other, so it's just art. And this channel is one of my hobbies, although it's grown bigger than I ever thought it would, and does actually make me a tiny bit of money, which I used to buy more hats. So it feeds itself now. And I already had a lot of hats before I started this channel. That was one of the inspirations. But the hats I use, I also usually, whenever I have friends over and we have a party, like my birthday party, we'll put on fun hats, and it adds a little bit to the ambiance. Lord D's 1385. The only question I have is, do you wear hats in your day-to-day life? If so, what are they? Yes, I do. I wear hats that usually are ones that are appropriate to the circumstances, the weather, or where I'm going. So, as I said, I wear my flat cap quite often. That's usually in the winter, especially when we have a farm that I work on too. So when I'm work there, I wear it because it's rainy outside. I wear my fedora when I wear a suit. I wear my ushanka when it's cold and snowy out. I wear my Panama when it's sunny. So yeah, but I do not wear hats outside a good circumstance. So there are many times when I'm not wearing a hat just because there's no reason for it. And so I do wear hats in day-to-day life, but much more often than the average person, but not always. So you might see me hatless in the street on a regular basis. Don't be too surprised. Diana Patterson, 1559. Have you discovered a reason, sensible or not, for why covering the head is a sign of respect? Burying the head to be more vulnerable seems rather easier to decode, as is covering women's hair, which seems to be a lure for some men. So the reason I found is basically that since the head is considered one of the most important parts of the bodies, rightly so, so Western cultures have developed the habit that uncovering it to expose it shows vulnerability, and that is a sign of deference and respect. And other cultures find that covering it is a sign of humility, of modesty, whether it be men or women. And so they consider that a sign of respect. And it is just acknowledging the head as most important part of you, and either exposing it to potential harm to show that you trust the person, or covering it to show that you are not flaunting your most uh, flaunting yourself to the person or deity, whichever that you are interacting with. Nico l'anonyme. Do you live in the U.S.? If so, what's your job? How did you end up over there? So, yes, I do live in the United States. Well, not all the time, but part of the time. Uh, and if so, what is your job? When I'm in the United States, I'm a historian. I work with various historical organizations in the Midwest where I live. And when I'm in France, I'm a farmer. We have a family farm. How did I end up over there? Well, half my family is from there, here. I'm filming this in the US right now. So half my family is from the US. And so I've always come back and forth between the two countries. Werner Zygmunt, 1995-44. What hat from the past do you think has lost its popularity but hope to regain that popularity? Well, sadly, I think all of them. I'm actually preparing a video on why that happened, but in the 60s, there was a great decline in the wearing of hats, mostly in Western countries, but then throughout the world. So all hats, basically, except the baseball cap, have lost their popularity. Well, given my taste, I hope all of them become popular again. So I know it's a vague answer, but that's the truth. JFD 7090, who has a bunch of questions. Okay, the so this is in French. The donkey cap, which in English we call the dun cap. Very old hats. What is a hat for? Famous people, famous men and women with their hat. Indian, I'm assuming you mean Native American, but not hats. And the sociology of hats throughout the ages. Okay, well, I'll do my best. The dunce cap was, so in France, that's why it's spelled the donkey cap. It was two-pronged, but it was a way to kind of shame bad students in what is now recognized as not exactly a productive psychological way, but they would put that hat on a bad student to that he would be instantly recognized as a bad student, and the hope was to shame him or her into improving their work. Usually it didn't really work, so, and mostly left more psychological scars than anything else, so not a good idea, but it's very famous and still seen in cartoons. Very old hats. They found some various hats in Egyptian tombs from there, and then one famous one too that I've talked about is the Ötzi the Iceman. He's the corpse of a prehistoric man found in a glacier on the Austro-Italian border, was found wearing a fur hat, and that's 6,000 years old. So those are hats that still exist today that are millennia old and still practical. The design would still work today. What's a hat for? Well, fundamentally, the hat is to protect the head from elements, sun, rain, cold, to protect it from harm, for like a helmet. And then anything else derives from that hats were made into a fashion accessory. So they became more ornate or associated with religion. But the basic purpose of a hat originally is just to protect the head. And that's what it's still used for today. Famous men and women with their hats, well, there's too many to list. I mean, you can go from Humphrey Bogart and his fedora, Abraham Lincoln and his top hat, Napoleon Bonaparte and his bicorn. Just the list is endless, but many people have worn hats over the centuries, and it became such an ingrained part of their appearance that you instantly think of them. So, too long to list. Native American, well, Indian headdresses, I'm assuming you mean Native American, they're important in their cultural significance, and maybe I'll cover one day. I just mentioned it earlier that I'd have to find one and get some sort of permission or blessing from a tribe to cover it, but we'll see. And sociology of hats throughout the ages, so that would be a video on its own, but suffice it to say that for a long time hats were considered necessary, and you wouldn't be caught any respectable person wouldn't be caught outside without some form of headgear, and it indicated status and wealth, and that is for centuries. Kozukizaki8675. What does the phrase, he's all hat and no cattle, mean to you? Well, as someone who does herd cattle on occasion, that's an old cowboy saying that just means that it's all about appearance and no substance, meaning it's a man who wears a cowboy hat to present himself as a cowboy, but he doesn't have any actual cows, so he isn't actually a cowboy, he's just pretending to be one. So that's the basic meaning of that phrase, and I'll let you know, I've earned my cowboy hat. I've herded cattle. Vislant, one question that is maybe indiscreet. I wouldn't be answering it if it were. But are you French or Francophone, having moved to the US and learned English over there, or American from birth, having learned French later, or maybe a mix of both, bilingual families, Francophone relatives in the US? Your accent in French sounds very slightly like comes from over the Atlantic. So, well, the answer is a mix of both. I am French from birth, born in France, in Caen, but I am also American from birth because my father's French and my mother's American. I actually learned English first because uh, my father's English at the time of my birth was better than my mother's French. By the time my brothers and sister were born, it flipped around. So I didn't actually start speaking French until I showed up at kindergarten. But at that age, you picked it up fast. So, and I'm told I have kind of a weird accent in both. I think it's just from learning languages simultaneously, going back and forth so much, it just gets slightly tainted. So, so the short answer to all of that is, are you French moving to the US or American having learned French later? The answer to all of that is yes. Okay, one last one. B3ST underscore B01 underscore N. Okay. Based on practicality, would you go for the Bergmütze or the baseball cap? Well, based on practicality, it depends where I am. Because I own both, obviously. If I'm in a sunny area, hot climate, or at a baseball game, which go Royals, I'll wear a baseball cap, and it fits a little tighter on the head, and for stuff like sports or what it was designed for, that's a baseball cap. But when I go skiing every now and again, and when I'm up in the mountains, I usually wear a Bergmütze. First of all, for the appearance, style is something, but also because I sometimes will lower the ear flaps onto my ears when to protect them when it's cold and snowy out. And my Bergmütze is a little thicker, so it keeps my head a little warmer. So the short answer, which I know is not satisfying exactly, but it depends where. Depends where I am. Okay, so those were all the questions that you all sent me. I hope that I answered them to your satisfaction. And so this was kind of fun. So maybe if I hit 100, maybe if or when I hit 100,000 subscribers, I'll do this again. So you do your job. Tell your family and friends to like and subscribe. So until next time, I tip my hat to you.